Hey there, this is Dan. You're watching The Salty Sea, and today I am going to sit in the dark in my basement and yell at you about a game that half the people watching may have never played. I think there are a lot of overlap between Warcry people and potential AOS enjoyers, but we'll see. I am very hyped about Path to Glory, if you haven't gotten the notion from this thumbnail so far. And I want to share with you why I think you should be hyped too, because I think it's a pretty cool thing to have happening. I don't know what else to say other than that. Over this past year, some of my favorite gaming has been the Path to Glory Ravaged Coast expansion. So I'm very excited to get another version of this. Path to Glory, I think, is the perfect second step on your hobby journey. Now, I have taken way more than just second steps in Warcry. I've got warbands for probably two-thirds of the factions in the game in Warcry, but for most normal, sane, reasonable human beings, Path to Glory is really the best second step that you can take in terms of playing your dudes. So if you take a faction that you really like and you get enough of the Warcry stuff so that you have all of the options for that faction. So, for example, let's say you like Cruel Boys and you got the Monster Killers, and then you also decided that you wanted to play regular Cruel Boys. So you got the Dominion half. And then you probably decided that you wanted maybe an ally so that you got I don't know, some Gorger Maw tribes or something. And then you have kind of all your options for Cruel Boys covered. Or you got maybe some brutes and now you have everything you want to play for Cruel Boys. Um, you've got kind of a reasonable number of Cruel Boys points here at this point, and Path to Glory immediately just kind of springs to mind as the best place to kind of play those things. You're probably pretty close to 1,000 points of Cruel Boys once you have all of the Warcry options for the faction. The same is going to be true if you get a Spearhead for almost any faction. That's going to put you anywhere between, some of them are as low as 400 points, but most of them are up in that 600 point range. Some of them are as high as 700 or 800 points. And so, kind of the next thing after you go, well, I've painted my spearhead, and that of stuff looks cool. I'm going to try painting that. Right away, you find yourself in that range of having the amount of points to start a Path to Glory. And so, having a game mode at this points cost that actually plays really well is a really great step, I think, for Games Workshop, and it's a really great step for players. Games Workshop does very few player-friendly initiatives, if I'm being honest, and Path to Glory is one of the rare ones. I would say in general that 2K armies are more than twice as difficult to put together than 1K armies are, partly because of what I said before. You can trip, fall, and end up with 1,000 points because you play Warcry and you have, the demon half and the mortal half for one of the chaos gods. And then all of a sudden you have 1,000 points of AOS stuff that you could play Path to Glory with. It's really easy to end up that way. And then you have to be very intentional to go from 1,000 to 2,000. And it's usually significantly more expensive than your first 1,000 was, especially if you were grabbing things like Spearhead boxes or Battle Force boxes or things like that. And so having this game mode that plays really well at that you can expand all the way up to 2K, but really Path to Glory plays just fine if you say limit it to 1,500 and you just start at 1,000 and end at 1,500. Plays great. But these types of kind of escalation leagues, there's a reason why before Path to Glory came out, stores were running these on their own, and it's because these are just much more friendly to maybe not the newest players, but the kind of intermediate or the second step players. And so I think that that's something that's just really good about Path to Glory without even considering the gameplay. But the second reason I'm hyped for this is because I have found this to be really heaven for the tinkering gamer. One of the biggest criticisms that a lot of the kind of straight AOS content creators, a lot of the AOS talking heads have leveled at the fourth edition of Age of Sigmar is that too much of the flavor of specific factions has gone away. I think that Path to Glory fixes that. It's another layer of narrative rules that sits on top of the normal game. And if you want to, you can think of this as sort of pure storytelling. And I like doing that, but if I'm being honest, I am a Johnny and I like expressing myself through, yes, story, but also through mechanics and through crunch and through kind of creating a crazy thing through the rules that are available to me. And so you get way more flavor when you uh, sort of add this layer of Path to Glory rules, and you get um, layer after layer of like resource management. I know that not everyone is going to hear that and get excited, but the fact is, we're gamers, right? That is what most games are, is managing your various resources to kind of create some kind of vibe on the tabletop if you are a tabletop gamer. And so, you know, you can really min max, or you can get lost in the sandbox, or you can do some combination of the two. Most people, that is what they are doing at any given time. And the extra rules really helps. Part of that is the Anvil of Apotheosis that is in every battle tome. Now, the Anvil you can play in just open play if you want to, but Path to Glory gives you that perfect home for it. And it's a really amazing piece of sort of Johnny food that is in these battle tomes. Every anvil that I've looked at, except for maybe the corn one, has like multiple really sweet build paths in it that you can go and that just look really fun to put on the tabletop. Some of them, you can go full smash, like the Iron Jaws one. Is just like so absurdly damage efficient for what you can build for 250 or 350 points. Others kind of let you do these sort of customizable support heroes at a really reasonable price. So, for example, like in Stormcast, you can get your priest, and if you were wondering, like, man, I really wish my priest had a shooting attack. Well, now you can do that, right? Because, in Stormcast, priests are often, or like wizards and priests are often standing on the back line. So why shouldn't they have a shooting attack, right? You can kind of do that with these sorts of anvils. And so I think that the Anvil of Apotheosis is worth its own video, but I would just say that it is really awesome and that it is an incredible way to kind of tinker and play around with your list, and its Path to Glory is really the perfect place for it. But the Blighted Wild set is bringing all kinds of other things like that too. The paths themselves are a really great sort of way to tinker with different effects. The Blighted Wilds is going to give sort of an anvil for terrain and an anvil for regiments, where you can do like units in your anvils. So um, there's just a lot to kind of digest and to play around with and to tinker with in a really low stress environment, which I think is the third reason that I'm really hyped for this expansion. The games in Path to Glory, I've done one Path to Glory campaign so far, but the games are pretty chill. Um, Big unique units are a big part of AOS, and they're cool, but there's just something when you remove all of the 360 plus point models from the game that just makes the game a lot more chill and a lot more relaxed, and just kind of changes the entire vibe of the game. And so I really like how the games play out, both starting at a lower points cost, but also kind of taking out some of the crazier elements of the game. And then it allows certain other units to shine. And if you do have your heart set on one of those big 360 point or more models, you can still get them. You can just recruit them later in Path to Glory, and they just won't be there for your first couple games, but you'll get them eventually. But seeing kind of the force evolve a little bit, and by the time those units show up, the other smaller units have gotten on their paths, have gotten various various upgrades so that it's a little bit more even between them, I think is a pretty interesting dynamic, and a dynamic that it's hard to really, I'm having a hard time explaining it verbally, but once you see it on the board, you'll really start to notice how much, each piece feels like an integral part of your army. Except for my poor Stormstrike Chariot, who just died almost every single time. I just threw it forward as like a pinning piece, and it died every time until I had to get rid of it due to all the battle scars. But almost every unit in your army ends up feeling like a really integral part of your force that is sort of growing and, you know, sort of evolving as you play. Another thing that makes the games a lot more chill is just no battle tactics. I don't want to make this video into a war over whether or not battle tactics are good in AOS. Um, I've played a decent amount of AOS, but I'm certainly not an AOS competitive player. All I would say is that I don't enjoy them. I didn't enjoy them in third. I didn't enjoy them or haven't enjoyed them in fourth. These can sometimes play out as like a pretty fun little puzzle, as kind of a mental gymnastics piece. Or they can be something that you kind of build your list to be able to do every single time. But in both situations, it doesn't necessarily feel like you're playing a battle game. It just feels like you are just kind of checking off boxes on a list, and I just don't find it particularly compelling. Um, Emberstones from the last Path to Glory book played out very differently on the table. They were kind of like treasures in Warcry, or kind of like if both players have picked the treasure battle tactic in current AOS. But what they did was they made it so that you sort of grabbed them and you really wanted to end the game with your certain units alive. And so there was a little bit of mobility of you running around, like trying to get into position to kill one thing or, run away with those things. And, you know, whether or not you like that particular sort of one battle tactic line in the current GHB, or whether you like Treasures in Warcry, thought that it played out in a way that was a little bit more interesting than most battle tactics games have historically played out for me, which I liked. This season is going to be pretty different than that. It's going to be terrain focused. So the battlefield is the third player, where you are going to be trying to kind of mess around with various pieces of terrain and fight over them and do abilities over them while you are doing the other missions. That is another thing to point out, is that only about two-thirds of the missions in the last Path to Glory book were objective based. A bunch had other victory conditions, and I think that because of that, I do like objective play, standing on circles play, but it's really nice to have certain breaks from that where you're trying to achieve something completely different. And I think that that's actually one of the strongest points of Warcry, which is, my main game. But I think that the Path to Glory kind of imports that part into AOS, where there's just like very different things you have to mess around with. And I think that that's a really good thing. Um, Last is the Underdog, and the obsession of the AOS design team around Underdog mechanics recently has just, I think, been a major detriment to the game for the most part. But narrative is the one place that they really do make a lot of sense. In matched play, I think Underdog mechanics turn to just another scoring system to game out, um, where it's either to your advantage to purposefully underscore yourself in round one so that you either get the underdog or don't give it up in round one, then score later, which you just contort your list to it to do it. That's just a different thing you build towards. Um, or it's just not impactful. So it never does what you want it to do as far as being a sort of catch up mechanic to make games interesting. In Spearhead, I think that it does that a little bit better, just because you can't contort lists or strategies as much to take advantage of it. But also, Spearhead games, I know their Spearhead is really popular, but a lot of the time with Spearhead, I can kind of feel the game's gears turning to make a game seem artificially close. And uh, it's not always that satisfying to me. However, in campaigns, underdog mechanics actually serve a purpose. There is, you know, the classic problem with all wargaming campaigns that has been more and more mitigated recently. But the classic problem is that one player just snowballs out of control, right? And the underdog mechanics kind of serve to limit that a little bit in a way that just makes them a lot more compelling in narrative play than they are in matched play, where they actually kind of become a feature instead of a bug, where one player might know that they're going to get this for the whole game before they even start the game, and so can plan around it. And it's not that the players are sort of gaming it out with their lists. Instead, they are seeing it from the beginning and it becomes part of the story. And I think that that just creates a much more compelling, not just a more compelling narrative, but also a more compelling play experience on the board. And so it's just really nice. And I really like it. It's just nice to have this sort of mechanic that I mostly hate in AOS and Warcry and Spearhead, and have that mechanic kind of morph into something that I really enjoy, and I think that's really awesome. So that's what I've got. This is certainly a smaller video than usual, but I'm very excited about this book that is coming out in 2 days. All of the people who actually have a relationship with Games Workshop already have it in hand. I do not, so I will be doing another strategy guide for this book. That was one of my most popular videos of the first half of last year, was actually my Ravaged Coast strategy guide. So I will be doing that, but it will be a little while because I need to get the book in my hands for a little bit, maybe play a game to kind of get more digested with it. I will be doing it, and I'll probably do a few other things as well. I want to play around with the various anvils, both the anvil of apotheosis and they're not anvils, but like the landmarks of Gairan and the regiment of renown creator that are in the Blighted Wilds, and you'd get some kind of fun narrative crunch videos based on those couple things too. So I'm excited for this book. I'm excited to mess around with it. It's not like I'm going to stop making Warcry videos, but I do have a lot that I want to explore with this. And so I'm going to be doing that, and watch out for those in the future. And may all your rolls be crits.